Minister.
Thanks, Chief Justice. Good morning, Acting DJP. I've just got two issues to canvass, and some aspects have already been canvassed already. But the first one was just President Meyer asked you about the magistrates, and I must say I was a bit disappointed with your reply, which indicated that they were more feeders of the High Court. Whereas, in fact, in terms of the Superior Courts Act, Section 84C, the Judge President, aside from the responsibilities of the Chief Justice, the Judge President is responsible for the coordination of all the judicial functions of the magistrates' courts within the jurisdiction. So, for example, there's no Chief Magistrate in Mthatha. Mr. Solwande was acting.
Yes,
There's a new Chief Magistrate who started, Acting Chief Magistrate who started 1st of October, Ms. Mviko. But if you become Judge President, you would be expected to play quite a crucial role in that coordination in the province, because you've got 3 Chief Magistrates and a number of problems. You had the problem in Mthatha about 2 years ago where practitioners didn't want to use the Regional Court for civil matters. And so they came and crowded the High Court. That did, I think, largely get addressed. I don't know if you've got any comments on it, but that's the role you would be expected to play. So if I can ask you again that question, how are you going to fulfill this function in terms of 84C, of coordinating the judicial functions of all the magistrates' courts in the Eastern Cape? The second question was also partially canvassed by Commissioner Fourie, but given that you've got 4 courts in the province, and the 2 busiest courts are at either end of the province, and then you've also got the magistrates who are also have a number of challenges in the Eastern Cape, are you going to have the energy to do all this?
Practically, let me start off with the second question. Practically, my view is it may be almost well nigh impossible to visit all the districts as a JP. You've alluded to the fact that there are 3 chief magistrates. The interaction should be at that level. The tools, the working tools to assess and check on what is happening should be at the level of the JP interacting with the various chief magistrates, Commissioner. I'm not saying there can be no interaction.
Just saying, don't forget the Regional Court President as well.
Yes, the Regional Court President as well. At the level, thank you for that. At the level that, for instance, we've got 1 Regional Court President, if I remember well, in the Eastern Cape. There should be meetings with the Regional Court President, discussing matters of concern. For instance, on the issue of practitioners preferring to run to the High Court, just as a judge, not necessarily as an ADJP. I've had moments where I have actually indicated that costs will be granted on the magistrates' court scale. In instances where practitioners have elected to go to the High Court, that is one way of discouraging them. And I've had responses like, well, the magistrates there don't fully understand civil work and so on and so forth. Now, that in and by itself points to the fact that the load on the part of the JP is huge, the responsibility is huge. There are those areas where empowerment will be needed. But practically all I can say is interaction between the JP and the chief magistrates and the regional court president is a necessity. Then there was this about 4 courts, Commissioner.
The question was, will you have the energy?
Oh yes, I've contextualized it.
Yes.
I've contextualized it. Yes, the energy to the extent that there is a level at which one must interact with the relevant functionaries heading the various stations and not necessarily being at the stations at all given points in time. There will be occasions when it will be necessary to actually pay a visit to a particular court because there are concerns that the facilities are not up to scratch, and one would have to deal with that head on. Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, for what it is worth, even if there are no concerns, from time to time I visit magistrates' courts and it has proved to be beneficial.
That's worth
Schmidt?
emulating, Chief Justice. Thank you for that.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Thank you, Chief Justice. There seems to have been much emphasis on the fact that you're relatively junior in terms of the standing of a judge, which in my view shouldn't be a problem as long as you've got the ability, the personal traits to lead the division successfully.
Yes.
My concern is more along the lines of what the acting JP stated, and that is that your success seems to be confined to Mthatha, and that there appears to be a lack of a perception of interaction with judges of other divisions, which may be bigger and may handle more cases. Now, there is a risk factor attached to that, appointing someone who hasn't had the opportunity of acting as JP for that division then. I seem to be looking for a way of dealing with that concern, which I haven't heard you dealing with it in terms of the question by the Deputy Minister saying, this is how we'll deal with the magistrates. I will go look for the Chief Magistrate. Or
Same approach.
And that was, I was leading to the question is, how would you interface with the Deputy Judge Presidents, but also with the judges in the unknown field of not having acted before, and what kind of approach would you take? What kind of?
Perhaps let's view it from this angle, Commissioner. During my presentation, I pointed out that judges, the division over, have respect for me. Now, if you look at the CV, look at the judgments that I've penned. They are not confined to Bisho, where I'm stationed. There are judgments written in relation to Port Elizabeth cases, Grahamstown cases. One earns respect in the course of interacting with colleagues when one is deployed to the various subdivisions or sister divisions. Perhaps let me add and say some of the most senior judges, even in those divisions, have encouraged me to avail myself, and in so many words. I also alluded to the fact that I have penned full court judgments, some of which are reported, pointing to the fact that in those instances I wrote those judgments. And in fact, I did so because I had been requested by the senior judges themselves. They could only have done that purely because they trust my judgeship. So there is that trend generally. And then on the issue of having acted as DJP and not as JP, leadership is leadership. That's how I can approach it. Leading, being lead judge, the ability to facilitate work in a division. But remember, I also pointed to the fact that we've got precedents in this country. We have people who became JPs without even having acted as JPs. You will recall that I made mention of names. I would hate doing that again, to belabor that point. It's all about leadership qualities that one possesses, and the trust that the colleagues repose in the particular judge and his capability as a lawyer. But most importantly, when you lead, it does not necessarily mean that you know it all. You are there to facilitate. It is your opportunity to acknowledge skills within your division. There may be people good in tax law, there may be people good in maritime law, and all sorts of other fields. What is important is to ensure that you identify the relevant people at all given points in time. Facilitation mainly is the crux of my answer, which has nothing to do with seniority. The ability to be a facilitator can be found even in a person who is junior. The issue about juniority is you know, it's hard for one to move from the premise that one who has been a lawyer for 33 years is junior. I think let me put it like that. I've been a lawyer for 33 years. I've penned judgments. I was silk. I was involved in high-profile cases before the Concord, before the SCA. I contributed to the jurisprudence of this country. So, yes, junior, but capable. and ready to facilitate and ready to be guided by seniors. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmidt. Maybe so that you don't belabor that point again, my colleague and friend, the President of the Federal Constitutional Court of Germany, who came straight from the university to become president of that court, and is one of the finest you can ever come across.
Yes.
And Robert was a most junior judge, the Chief Justice of America, so please don't go back there.
I won't, but perhaps allow me to quote what Frankfurter once said in relation to the appointment of a Chief Justice, not a Judge President. I quote, "The most relevant things about an appointee, that is as Chief Justice, are his breadth of vision, his imagination, his capacity for disinterested judgment, his power to discover and suppress his prejudices. Throughout history, the Supreme Court of America has called for statesmanship, the gifts of mind and character fit to rule nations." Nothing is said about seniority.